Hello everyone. Before we start, make sure to like and subscribe to the channel and leave a comment with where you're from and what time you're watching. That way, YouTube will keep showing you stories just like this one. Now, let's begin. This didn't happen recently. It was way back in the late 90s, 1997 I think, when I took an overnight job at a small gas station tucked off a 2-lane road just outside Ely, Minnesota. One of those forgotten towns you only find if you're lost or low on fuel. The place didn't even have proper signage, just a rusted Texaco logo hanging half off its hinges and an old neon open light that flickered more than it glowed. I worked the graveyard shift, 11 p.m. to 7 a.m., 5 nights a week, and I'll be honest, most nights were boring. Not quiet, boring. You get the occasional logger passing through, a lost tourist, maybe a trucker trying to find a shortcut. But after 2 a.m., the whole world went dark and still. It was the kind of silence that made you notice the sound of your own breathing. Most nights I'd kill time behind the register watching static-filled TV or flipping through old fishing magazines left by the owner. Now here's the thing. I've never been a paranoid person. Grew up hunting, camping, sleeping under stars that looked close enough to touch. I'm not one to jump at shadows. But that part of Minnesota always had this strange feeling. The woods out there don't just surround you, they watch you. You get what I'm saying? Anyway, one night, sometime after 1 a.m., a guy came in to grab gas. Just a regular-looking customer. Paid in cash, bought a bottle of root beer and a pack of American spirits, then left. As he pulled away, I noticed something weird just past the pumps near the tree line. There was something crouched there. Looked like a big dog at first. I couldn't make it out clearly through the glare of the lights mounted under the roof canopy, but it was still, too still, not sniffing, not moving, just sitting there. Then I blinked, and it was gone. Now, normally I'd just laugh it off, right? Coyote, maybe a wolf, happens. But I'd seen wolves before. This thing had felt different, bigger, not right. But I shook it off and went back inside. Figured I was just tired. A couple hours passed. Dead quiet. Not a single car. Even the static from the TV seemed louder than usual. Then I heard something bang from out back. Not inside the building, but definitely behind it, right where the dumpsters were. At first, I figured it was a raccoon, or maybe a drifter. We'd had 1 or 2 homeless folks poke through the trash before. Wasn't my business. Let them take what they needed. But the sound got louder. Scraping, thumping, like something was tearing through the bags. And then I heard the metal lid of the dumpster slam shut, like something had dropped it from above. I grabbed the flashlight we kept under the till, and took the .38 my boss kept in a lockbox under the sink. Not because I thought I'd need it, but because my gut was screaming at me to not go out there unarmed. I stepped out into the night. The air was so cold it burned my lungs. No wind, no crickets, just the buzzing of the floodlights and the crunch of gravel under my boots. I circled around the building and aimed the flashlight toward the dumpsters. And that's when I saw it. It was there, half inside the dumpster, hunched over, digging through trash like a raccoon. Only this wasn't a raccoon. It stood up and my heart stopped. It wasn't a dog either. This thing stood on 2 legs, tall, about as tall as me, and I'm just over 6 feet. Its arms were too long for its body, its chest sunken, its spine arched. In the flashlight's beam, its eyes lit up like molten amber. And then it turned to face me. Its head tilted just a little, and I saw it, this pale, stretched face. Almost human, but not quite. Its skin looked like it had been pulled too tight across its bones, and it twitched like it didn't fully know how to wear itself. I dropped the flashlight. The gun slipped from my hand. I didn't run. I bolted. I made it inside, slammed the door, locked it, then backed up so fast I knocked over a shelf of snacks. I didn't move again until the sun came up. Just sat there behind the counter, shaking, trying not to breathe too loud. I never saw it again. I didn't need to. I quit that job the next morning. Told my boss I couldn't work another night there. Didn't explain. Wouldn't have believed me if I had. I still think about it sometimes. especially when I'm driving down a quiet road and see woods pressing in from both sides. I don't know what it was, a skinwalker, something older. But I know what I felt when it looked at me. It didn't see a person. It saw a thing standing between it and what it wanted. And I got the feeling that next time, it wouldn't just let me walk away. You ever drive through a town so small, you can't tell if anyone actually lives there, or if it's just leftover buildings refusing to fall down? That's what it felt like out there. Empty, but not dead, like something was waiting under the quiet. This happened back in 2017. I was 31, coming off a messy split and helping my brother move across provinces. I'd been doing the back and forth run between Ottawa and Thunder Bay for weeks, hauling boxes, grabbing tools, crashing on fold-out couches. This was my last trip. I was alone, just trying to get home before midnight. I'd been driving for nearly 5 hours straight when my fuel light popped on. I don't know if you've ever driven up through northern Ontario in the off-season, but there are stretches where there's nothing for miles. No towns, no rest stops, just pines and power lines, and a whole lot of silence. I pulled off onto a road that wasn't even on my GPS anymore. Just a rusted sign that said Rivers Bend, 6 kilometers. No gas station icon, nothing official, but I didn't really have a choice. About 10 minutes in, the forest opened up into what looked like an old mining town. A few shuttered storefronts, one flickering street lamp, and thank God, a gas station. It looked abandoned at first. No lights inside, no other cars, but the pumps still had power, so I rolled in. It was cold. Not winter cold, just that weird damp chill that hits when the sun starts to go down. The kind of cold that makes you feel watched. I got out, swiped my card, and started pumping. That's when I noticed them. 2 guys. They were standing just outside the convenience store doors, not talking, not moving, just watching. One of them had a dirty parka on, the hood up. The other wore some kind of mechanic's jacket, sleeves too long. Both of them had their hands in their pockets. At first, I told myself they were just locals. Maybe waiting for someone. Maybe the clerk. Maybe just being weird. But then they started walking. Not fast. Not directly. Just kind of ambling in my direction, like they weren't sure if they wanted to look casual or deliberate. You ever seen someone try to act like they're not trying to scare you and somehow make it worse? I looked at the pump. It was only halfway done. I thought about yanking the nozzle out early, but I had to unlock my car to get back in, and they were getting closer. That's when the taller one said something. "Need help there, bud?" But he didn't sound helpful. He didn't sound curious either. He said it like he already knew I needed help. I didn't respond, just kept one hand on the pump, the other inching toward my car door. He took another step, pretty far out for someone with no plates. I froze. My front license plate had fallen off during the drive. I'd meant to reattach it back at my brother's, but forgot. Thing is, they couldn't see the front of my car, not from where they'd been standing, which meant they'd either seen me coming or they'd been out there before I pulled in. My phone was on the passenger seat. I couldn't get to it in time. I looked back at the store. No lights, no clerk, just me, these 2 guys, and the sound of gas filling the tank. Except, it wasn't anymore. The pump had stopped, the numbers frozen. I looked down. The nozzle was still in, but no gas was coming out. Then I heard it. The click of the pump being deactivated. They'd killed the power. I let go of the handle and backed toward my door. The guy in the parka pulled something from his pocket. At first I thought it was a phone, but it wasn't. It was a screwdriver. He twirled it once in his fingers, just enough to let me know I was screwed. "Don't gotta be like this," the short one muttered. "You can just come inside, there's heat." I unlocked the door, flung it open, and got in. They lunged. I locked the doors with half a second to spare. The tall one slammed his palm against the glass. The short one circled around to the passenger side. My phone was dead. No signal. I threw the car in reverse and peeled out, the pump still in my tank. It yanked free with a metallic groan and clattered across the lot. I didn't look back until I hit the highway. I filed a report the next day at a detachment near Wawa. They didn't find the guys. Didn't find anyone at the gas station either. You know that weird sense you get when a place has been forgotten by time, but it keeps living anyway? That's how it feels out here. Like the road moved on, but the buildings didn't get the memo. And at night, the quiet doesn't sound peaceful. It sounds like something waiting to speak. I've been working the graveyard shift at this gas station for almost 6 months now. It's one of those old stations tucked along an empty service road somewhere in northern Arkansas. The kind of road people only take when the highway's closed or their GPS glitches out. Back in the day, it used to be part of the main route that led toward the Ozarks, back when road trips meant something. But the new interstate system cut through 10 years ago, and all the foot traffic vanished overnight. Businesses folded. Motels were boarded up. All that's left are the empty shells of old diners and bars, a single mechanic shop still limping along, and this gas station still flickering under the same cracked neon sign. I work alone, every night, from 8 p.m. to 4 a.m. It's quiet, usually. Lonely, sure, but I don't mind the solitude. I'm 23, saving up to get out of town, and this place, boring as it is, lets me listen to music, study sometimes, and get paid without a boss breathing down my neck. The weird part, the stockroom is in the basement. It's a narrow stairwell behind the bathroom hallway with a single pull-chain light and no railings. The basement itself is cramped and low-ceilinged, lined with dusty shelves of paper towels, chip boxes, motor oil, and outdated soda bottles we never put out anymore. It's never felt right down there. I've always chalked it up to old building vibes, that kind of cold that lingers, even in the summer. That kind of silence that feels just a little too alert. It was early December when this happened. Cold, dry, no wind, no clouds, just a still, sharp kind of night. Business was dead. I hadn't seen a car in nearly an hour. Around 3:15 a.m., I got up from the counter and figured I should at least restock the shelves before the morning shift came in. I noticed we were out of sour cream chips, so I grabbed my keyring and headed toward the back. Now, I should have trusted my gut. I'd had this weird tension building in my chest since midnight. Not fear exactly, more like pressure, like something just under the surface was wrong, and I couldn't name it. I opened the stairwell door. The air that hit me smelled stale and dry, almost burnt, like hot plastic. I clicked on the chain light, and the bulb buzzed a moment before flickering to life. I started down slowly, my boots creaking on the old wooden steps, and about halfway down, I stopped. There was a sound, a soft shuffle. Then something clattered, a small metal crash, like a can rolling. I froze. There shouldn't be anyone down there. The only way in is from the main store, and I'd been alone all night. I stayed frozen on the step for a solid 5 seconds, then another sound, footsteps, coming toward the stairs. Not fast, not aggressive, just approaching. I backed up a step. Then I turned and bolted back up, slammed the door shut behind me, and locked the deadbolt. I didn't care what I'd heard. I just knew I couldn't be down there. Heart racing. I circled back to the counter, sat down hard on the stool, and pulled up the old security system. It's a janky setup with 4 grainy black and white feeds, one for the pumps, one for the front door, one for the back hallway, and one for the basement. When I switched to the basement cam, I nearly dropped the mouse. There was a man, standing directly under the camera. He was just staring straight up at it, not moving, not pacing, not looking around, just smiling. His head was tilted at this uncomfortable angle, like he'd been staring for a long time and didn't care that his neck was hurting. His eyes were wide open, not blinking. He looked clean, too clean. He was dressed decently, with hands in his pockets, hair combed, like he could have walked in off the street and bought a scratch ticket, and I wouldn't have thought twice. But his face, that smile, it was too wide, too calm. He wasn't surprised to see the camera. He was waiting for it. And then he moved. Just a little. His hand came out of his pocket and he waved, a slow, drawn-out wave, like someone saying goodbye to a child at a bus stop. I backed away from the monitor, heart in my throat. My hands were shaking so badly, I almost knocked over the coffee machine. I didn't know what to do. Call the cops. The landline was in the back, right near the stairwell. I waited, watched. The man never moved again. After about 10 minutes, I checked the feed again, and he was gone. Just like that, no footsteps, no exit, no camera delay, gone. I waited until dawn before unlocking that basement door. When I finally went down with the morning clerk, the shelves were normal, nothing moved, no sign of anyone ever being there. I haven't taken a single shift since. I quit, gave up the paycheck, the references, everything. There are some faces that just stick with you, not because they did something extraordinary or even particularly evil, just because something about them didn't fit. Like a song that's just barely off key, but you can't stop hearing it. Back in 2019, I was working part-time at a small gas station off Highway 22, a quiet 2-lane that cuts through the mossy backwoods of Washington. It's one of those stations with a tiny attached mart, dusty snacks, expired beef jerky, off-brand soda. No one stops there unless they're desperate or lost. I was 21, saving for school, and took the job mostly for the hours. I liked the quiet. Most days you'd get a couple loggers early in the morning, maybe a lost camper asking for directions. Then you'd have hours of nothing but the hum of the fridge and the drumming of rain on the roof. That day was just like that. Gray skies, steady drizzle, air so damp it felt like you were breathing through cloth. I had a thermos of coffee, earbuds in, and I was counting gum packs when the guy pulled in. It wasn't the first time I'd seen him. In fact, it was the third time that week. Same car, a beat-up red Mazda with a plastic trash bag for a rear window. Same clothes, faded jeans, denim jacket, trucker cap. Same routine, pull up to the pump, try to look casual, then wander in claiming he forgot his wallet. The first time, I gave him a break, told him to come back and settle later. He never did. Second time, I told him we couldn't front gas anymore. He gave me this look like I'd insulted his entire bloodline, but left without a word. So when I saw him again, my stomach tightened. I didn't say anything at first, just watched from behind the counter as he got out, left the car running, and picked up the pump nozzle. I didn't turn it on. He stood there for a few seconds, pumping air, then turned toward the building and walked in. His face was blank, but tight, like he was holding something in. "You gonna turn it on, or what?" he said. I stayed behind the counter. "Do you have your wallet this time?" Something snapped in his expression, like a mask cracking. He muttered something I didn't catch, then louder. "You think I'm some kind of thief?" I stayed calm. I've had weirdos yell before. I just said, "Sir, I can't turn the pump on without payment. That's store policy." He didn't argue. He didn't yell again. He threw, first the candy stand, sunflower seeds, and breath mints clattering across the floor. Then the newspaper rack, which slammed into the cooler, shattering one of the glass panes. It was so sudden, I froze. He stormed back outside without another word, yanked open his door, slammed it shut, and drove off. Except the pump nozzle was still in his car. I watched it in slow motion. The black rubber hose stretched, then snapped free. It whipped across the lot like a rubber band, the steel nozzle spinning wildly, and it missed a woman's face by inches. She was just stepping out of her SUV with her toddler, didn't even see it coming. Her husband did. He dove in front of her and yanked her back just in time. The nozzle smacked the car instead, leaving a dent the size of a grapefruit. The guy didn't stop, just kept driving. The woman was crying. Her kids started screaming. Her husband, he took off running after the car. Full sprint, like something snapped in him too. I grabbed the store phone and dialed the county sheriff. They told me to stay put and wait for a deputy. About 10 minutes later, the husband came back, blood on his knuckles, panting, holding the guy's keys. "He's down at the crossroads," he said, voice shaking. "Crashed into a sign. He's not going anywhere." I gave my full statement to the sheriff when they arrived, told them about the previous visits, the fake wallet excuses, the outburst. They took security footage and wrote up a report. A few weeks later, I got a subpoena. The guy was being charged with reckless endangerment, property damage, and attempted assault. I testified in a courtroom that smelled like floor wax and coffee breath. He sat there at the defendant's table like a wax figure, stone still, eyes forward, wearing a suit that didn't fit. When they asked him why he kept coming back without a wallet, he said he didn't remember ever being at the station before. That shook me more than anything else. Because if he was lying, he was damn good at it. His face didn't twitch once. He looked confused, genuinely confused. But the footage was there. My testimony was solid. He was sentenced to time served and mandatory psychiatric evaluation. When I was 19, I took a job as a gas station attendant in a little town called Yerington, Nevada. It was one of those towns that feels like it exists between moments. Quiet, tucked away, and mostly forgotten by people just passing through. The station itself sat off a lonely two-lane highway, the kind of road where you could drive for miles without seeing a single car. It had been busier once, back before the new bypass redirected traffic and slowly drained the life out of the surrounding businesses. By the time I worked there, the station was one of the few places still holding on. I was eager to prove myself. It was one of my first jobs, and I really wanted to show my supervisor, Mike, a grizzled man who had clearly seen better days, that I could be trusted. But things hadn't started off the way I'd hoped. I'd already made a couple of mistakes, miscounting stock, leaving a back door unlocked once. Nothing major, but enough for Mike to stop trusting me with anything outside the basics. He wasn't exactly patient with new people. One Thursday evening, I was working the closing shift alone. Mike always left early on Thursdays to grab drinks with his cousin across town, so it was just me and the sound of buzzing lights. It was early fall, the kind of crisp, quiet evening where the world feels like it's holding its breath. Not a single customer had come by in over an hour, and the sun had already dipped below the hills. I was outside near the supply shed, checking the shelving units where we stored things like oil cans, windshield fluid, and leftover paint stock. I had just finished counting inventory and was heading around the side of the building when I heard a sharp, cracking noise. At first, I assumed it was a tire popping on the highway, or maybe one of those old transformers shorting out again. But then came another crack. Louder, closer. It echoed off the concrete and metal like a firecracker. That's when I saw one of the shelves jerk sideways and collapse. Paint cans tumbled to the ground, some of them splitting open on impact. The realization hit me hard. Someone was shooting at the station. I dropped to the ground without thinking, adrenaline surging so fast my ears rang. I scrambled behind the diesel pump, crouching low and trying not to breathe too loudly. Another shot rang out, this one slamming into the wall just a few feet from where I had been standing. I could hear small bits of debris raining down behind me. I stayed down, heart pounding, trying to convince myself this wasn't happening. When the silence returned, it came all at once. No gunfire, no footsteps, just the whisper of wind passing through the lot. Eventually, I gathered the courage to peek around the side of the pump. That's when I saw him standing across the road, partially obscured behind a broken-down tractor in a vacant, overgrown lot. He was thin, maybe in his 50s, with grayish, greasy hair and a hollow face. His clothes didn't look dirty, but there was something off about him. He held a rifle casually in one hand and a crumpled plastic bag in the other. He didn't appear angry or frantic. He wasn't looking for someone to confront. He just stood there, completely still, staring at the gas station like he was waiting for it to respond. He didn't glance around, didn't speak, just stared. And then, without a word or a warning, he turned away and vanished into the tall grass behind the lot. I didn't move for several minutes. My hands were trembling too badly to even reach for my phone at first. When I finally got back inside, I locked every door and window, pulled the blinds, and called Mike, who of course didn't answer. I left him a shaky voicemail, then sat behind the counter gripping the landline with one hand and an old crowbar with the other, just in case he came back. The police didn't show up until the next morning. I explained everything to them, what I saw, where he had been standing, what he looked like. They walked the lot and confirmed there were shell casings out back. Paint cans had been blown apart, oil tins destroyed. But none of the shots seemed aimed at the building itself, and somehow none had hit the pumps. One of the officers said something I'll never forget. Seems like he wasn't trying to hurt anyone, just wanted to wreck some supplies. That should have been a relief, but it wasn't. It made things worse somehow. Who brings a rifle to a gas station just to shoot at metal cans and walk away? They never found him. No one in town recognized the description. It was like he came out of nowhere just to vent some invisible rage, then disappeared for good. I kept going over it in my head afterward. What if he had been aiming at me? What if he missed? Or worse, what if I wasn't the point at all? What if it wasn't personal, but the station itself was the target, as if it reminded him of something he wanted to erase? A week later, I handed in my keys. Mike didn't ask why, and I didn't offer an explanation. To this day, anytime I see an empty gas station on the side of the road, especially one where the lights are still flickering above the pumps, I get the urge to look over my shoulder, just in case he's still out there, waiting for something else to destroy. I used to work night shifts at a gas station tucked off a stretch of empty road in northern Oregon. This was back in 2009, before smartphones were glued to everyone's hands, before every filling station looked like a fluorescent supermarket. Ours was an old two-pump corner store, the kind of place that always smelled faintly of mildew and burnt coffee no matter how much you cleaned. We didn't have a deli, or digital signage, or polished tile floors, just a rickety wire shelf of snacks, a fridge that wheezed like it had asthma, and a black and white TV bolted up in the corner, picking up fuzzy signals from 3 local stations. If 2 people stood at the counter and someone opened the fridge, you were basically shoulder to shoulder. The station's owner, Harold, was one of those guys who hadn't changed a damn thing since the Reagan years. He let me smoke inside, let me bring in my own coffee machine, and didn't care what I did as long as the register balanced and the truck rental paperwork was filled out by morning. We had a boxy Dell desktop in the back room, where I'd check emails, scroll old forums, and sometimes watch pixelated documentaries on YouTube. Sometimes I'd bring my dog, Roscoe, a scrappy little mutt with huge ears and a beard that made him look like an angry professor. Harold didn't mind, and honestly, I felt safer having him there during those long hours when even the coyotes stayed quiet. The weird stuff started in late October. Nights had gotten colder and the fog rolled in thick after sunset. You know, the kind of fog where you can't see 10 feet past the pumps. The kind that makes everything feel underwater. I was in the back one night, sipping cold coffee and half reading some conspiracy thread on an old forum, when Roscoe let out this low, rattly growl. Not loud, not aggressive, just alert. He was facing the far corner of the storage room, where we kept busted mop handles and old oil cans. Nothing was over there, but his ears were up, tail stiff, eyes locked on a blank section of concrete wall, like he was waiting for something to move. I paused the video I was watching. Listened. Nothing. "Relax, buddy," I muttered, giving his head a scratch. But he didn't budge. Didn't blink. This became a pattern. Same time, same spot. Around 2:40 a.m., give or take a few minutes. Every night that week, Roscoe would sit up, ears perked, growling softly toward that back corner. By Thursday, I stopped finding it funny, because that's when I started hearing it too. At first, it was just the building creaking, or at least I thought it was. A single thud, like a shelf settling, or a pipe contracting from the cold. But then I heard something that sounded like a whisper. Not voices exactly, just the rhythm of speech. Roscoe barked once, loud, sharp. I nearly spilled my coffee. I got up and turned on the overhead light. The corner was empty, same as always, but Roscoe wouldn't go near it. Even when I tried coaxing him over, he just stood behind me, still growling. After that, I started sleeping with the lights on at home. The next night, something new happened. Roscoe and I were up front. I was restocking lighters, and he was curled under the stool when the front door chime went off. I looked up. No one. The door was shut. Locked, actually. I always locked it around 1 a.m. because the place never got customers after midnight, and I didn't like surprises. I checked the outside camera. Nothing but fog. Checked the register's motion sensor. Blank. Roscoe was up again, growling. Not at the door this time, but back toward the hallway leading to the storage room. And now I could hear it. Footsteps. Slow. Deliberate. Like boots dragging slightly across linoleum. I grabbed the flashlight we kept taped behind the counter and crept toward the hallway. The light flickered once when I clicked it on. That cheap kind of flashlight that always seems to die when you need it most. I swear I felt the air shift as I stepped into the hallway. It got cold. Too cold. My breath fogged. And then, without warning, all the fluorescent lights in the building shut off at once. Just darkness. Me, Roscoe barking behind me like his lungs were going to explode. And then, the bell rang. Not the electronic door chime. The bell, the old brass bell we kept on the back counter in the truck rental office. It rang 3 times, slowly. I don't remember running. Just remember being outside, standing in the gravel lot with Roscoe under my arm and the flashlight shaking in my hand. The power came back about 15 minutes later. Everything looked normal, except for the bell. It was gone. Never found it. Harold thought I was messing with him when I told him. Laughed it off. Said I'd just been watching too many horror flicks. But a week later, he switched me to daytime shifts without me asking. Said it was just in case. I don't work there anymore. The place got torn down in 2016 after a fire broke out one night when the new guy left a space heater too close to a stack of receipts. They said it was electrical. Maybe it was, but sometimes I wonder. Because the fire started in the back room, right in that corner, where Roscoe used to growl. This happened back in 2016, when I was working the midnight shift at a 24-hour petrol station just outside Cape Town. Not the nicest area, to be honest. We were tucked behind a highway off-ramp and mostly got late-night truckers, college kids, and a few of the usual characters who hung around every night. There was this one man, though, who stuck out. He came in every single night around 2:20 a.m., not 2:30 a.m., always 2:20 a.m., like he had set an alarm to always keep up with the time. He looked to be in his mid-50s. Medium height. Always wore the same windbreaker jacket, dark jeans and scuffed running shoes. Kind of hunched posture, like he was trying to take up less space than he did. Quiet guy, never said more than a few words. His ritual was always the same. He'd walk in slowly, nod at me, and stand in front of the cooler for a good 10 minutes, just staring. Not browsing, staring, like he was trying to solve a puzzle no one else could see. He'd reach for a can, hesitate, put it back, then just freeze there again. Sometimes he'd open the cooler and let the cold air wash over him for minutes without picking anything. Eventually, he'd grab a can of Stony ginger beer every time and come to the counter. He always paid in coins. Not big ones, either. Little silver 1 rand and 50-cent coins. Sometimes even 20-cent pieces. He'd count them out slowly, placing each one on the counter like it had weight beyond money. The totals were always exact, no matter how small. I didn't mind. He was harmless, just odd. Then came that one night. I remember, because there was a heavy fog outside, thick enough that you could barely see the edge of the forecourt. I was sipping instant coffee behind the till when the chime rang, and there he was again, 2:20 a.m., like clockwork. But this time was different. No standing, no staring. He walked straight to the cooler, grabbed 4 cans of Stony, then turned and grabbed a handful of snacks off the shelves. Biltong, crisps, those marshmallow chocolate pies no one ever buys. He moved with purpose, like he was on a mission. I stood up straight, already expecting the coin-counting ritual. But he reached into his pocket and pulled out a thick roll of R200 notes. I'm not exaggerating, there had to be well over R4000 in his hand. He peeled off exact change for the total. No hesitation, no second guessing. Just folded the wad back into his jacket and nodded like always. I said something dumb like, "Big night?" trying to mask my surprise. He just said, "Won't be coming tomorrow," then walked out. The fog swallowed him before I even heard his footsteps fade. The next night, I waited. 2:20 came and went. No sign. Same the night after, and the night after that. Then 5 days later, he returned. Same clothes, same routine, back to just one can of ginger beer. And this time, back to the small coins. No R200 notes, no snacks, no explanation. It was like that weird night never happened. I wanted to ask. Hell, I almost did. But there was something about him that made you hold your questions. Like he was part of some story you weren't supposed to read all the way through. He kept coming for a few more weeks. And then, one night, he didn't. Never saw him again. It happened on a foggy spring morning, sometime in late April. I was around 9 years old then. Small for my age, quiet and glued to my Game Boy like it was a lifeline. I can't really remember all that happened that day, but I can remember a decent part of it. My dad and I were making a long drive from Pittsburgh to visit some family near Boston, and we'd already been on the road for a few hours when he decided to stop for gas somewhere outside Scranton. It was a tiny place, just a single pump island, a rusted-out awning overhead, and a convenience store that looked like it hadn't changed since the 1980s. The kind of station that only locals would recognize, and even then probably avoid unless absolutely necessary. The sun was still low behind the morning clouds, casting the whole place in this cold, gray-blue light. Everything felt hushed, like the world hadn't fully woken up yet. I remember it all so clearly. My dad parked the car next to the farthest pump and stepped out to fill the tank. He gave me a quick thumbs up through the window and said he was going inside to grab coffee and something for me to snack on. I nodded without really looking up. I was locked into Pokemon Blue, my headphones over my ears and the tinny music playing like background static in my brain. I don't know how much time passed. Maybe a minute, maybe two. That's when the passenger door clicked open. I looked up, and an old man, very old, with papery skin and eyes that didn't seem to focus on anything, lowered himself slowly into the front seat. He didn't say a word, just sat there, hands folded in his lap, staring straight ahead through the windshield. I froze. At that age, I didn't know what I was supposed to do. Scream? Get out? Say something? I didn't move. I didn't even take off my headphones. I just stared at him, waiting for him to notice me, or worse, turn to me. But he didn't. He just sat there in silence, breathing softly, blinking every so often, like he was waiting for someone to start the car. A few long minutes crawled by. It felt like I was trapped in a dream, like my body wasn't mine, and the air had gone too thick to breathe. I could hear the muffled voice of my Game Boy, still buzzing in my ears, but I couldn't focus on it. My stomach was coiled up in knots. Then the gas station door slammed open. A man, maybe in his 40s, wearing a flannel shirt and looking panicked, ran out, yelling over the lot. "Dad! Dad, no, that's not our car. Come on, Dad, not again!" He ran straight toward us, waving his arms. "Sir, I'm so sorry," he called out, making eye contact with me through the glass. "That's my father. He gets confused sometimes. Hank, come on now, this isn't our car." Still, the old man didn't move. The guy yanked open the passenger door and gently put a hand on the man's shoulder. "Hank," he said more softly now, "let's go. You're in the wrong car. It's okay. Come on." The old man blinked slowly, then finally nodded. No words, no apology. He just stood up with that same slow, deliberate motion and shuffled out of the vehicle. The younger man gave me this look, something between embarrassment and exhaustion. "Sorry, kid," he said again. "My dad's not all there anymore. I'm really, really sorry." I just nodded. I didn't say a word. I couldn't. I don't even remember what I told my dad when he came back with the coffee and beef jerky. I think I mentioned that someone sat in the car by mistake, but I didn't explain how long he was there, or how I just sat still, completely paralyzed. Part of me was embarrassed. Another part didn't want to talk about it. Alright, I'm going to try and tell this the best I can. It's not something I talk about much, not because I'm afraid people won't believe me, but because I don't even like remembering it. The whole thing feels like a dream you can't quite wake up from. One of those that sticks to your skin long after it ends. This happened about 6 years ago, back when I was working the night shift at a gas station in North Carolina, somewhere between Fayetteville and the coast. It wasn't a big town, just one of those drive-through spots that gets swallowed up by trees and forgotten exits. You know the kind. Half of the businesses around us were either dollar stores or boarded-up pawn shops. And between those, you'd find old houses with sagging porches, tired strip malls, and 3 gas stations, each with their own little circle of late-night weirdos. I worked at the fuel stop, a tiny place on the corner of a 2-lane road that led toward the interstate. We were a little too far out to get regular foot traffic and a little too close to the highway to feel like we mattered. But we had just enough business to keep the lights on. Most of our customers during the day were commuters or weekenders headed to Carolina Beach. Families, truckers, military guys, stuff like that. But once the sun dipped behind the trees, it was like someone flipped a switch. The entire vibe would shift. You could feel it when you stepped outside to take out the trash or smoke a cigarette near the dumpster. The traffic thinned out, the road went quiet, and the night took over. That's when the regular customers stopped showing up and the others started to roll in. Now, I'm not talking about anything demonic or paranormal here. Not yet, anyway. I mean people, the kind who don't really fit anywhere. We had a guy who would walk in every Tuesday after midnight, buy 6 boiled eggs, eat them one at a time while staring at the ATM, and then leave. He won't even say a word. We had another guy, at least I think it was a guy, who wore a mesh veil over his face and carried a jar full of what looked like dead beetles. Again, never spoke. Just wandered the candy aisle and left without buying anything. That stuff I got used to. But what happened during my last week working there is something I still haven't wrapped my head around. It started with the bell above the door. If you've worked at a gas station, you know the sound. That sharp little ding that goes off when someone walks in. Ours was loud, like someone had stepped on a cat. But that particular night, I heard it without the door opening. It was sometime after 2 a.m. I remember because I had just finished restocking the cigarette display and was about to sit down behind the counter with my 3rd cup of terrible coffee. The store was empty, no cars at the pumps, no one outside, but the bell rang, clear as day. I stood up and peeked over the counter. Nothing. The sliding doors hadn't moved. The motion sensor lights outside didn't trigger. There was no breeze, no wind, no reason for that sound to happen. I chalked it up to the system glitching. Old wiring, faulty sensor, something like that. But the next night, it happened again. And then again. Same hour, same phantom bell. Only this time, it was followed by a sound that made the hair on my arms stand up. Shuffling. Not footsteps. More like dragging. Like someone was walking with one shoe on and the other foot bare. I couldn't see anything, but I could hear it. Soft and slow, moving across the linoleum, just out of sight. I called out, "Hello? You all right?" No answer. I walked the aisles, flashlight in hand. Nothing. Checked the cooler. Nothing. Checked the stockroom. Nothing. But when I got back behind the counter, there were 3 quarters sitting on the register tray. I hadn't put them there. And that's when I started to feel like I wasn't alone anymore. Not in the store, not even on the drive home. Over the next few days, things got stranger. The security footage began showing static at random intervals. Sometimes it would cut to black for just a second, just long enough to make me rewind it and check. When I did, nothing was there. But I started to notice something in the footage. Reflections. In the cooler glass, in the windows near the bathrooms, a shape. Thin, pale, tall. And the weirdest part, it was always facing away from the camera, like it knew where the lens was and made sure not to be seen. By the 5th night, I was done. I didn't need the job that bad. I left a note for my manager and handed in the keys the next morning. On my last shift, just before sunrise, The bell rang one more time. I was locking the door, getting ready to leave. No one was there. But this time, it wasn't silent. Somewhere behind the ice machine. I didn't go check. I got in my car and left the lot without looking back. People always think working the night shift means dealing with weirdos, and sure, that's true. But there's something else that happens in places like that. Places that sit between highways and nowhere, lit by flickering fluorescents and surrounded by trees that feel too quiet. Sometimes you don't meet the weirdos. Sometimes the weird finds you.